Hello and welcome to IELTS Bob, your ultimate destination for IELTS exam preparation. I'm Bob, your dedicated guide to mastering the IELTS and achieving your dreams of studying, working, or living abroad. Are you overwhelmed by endless IELTS practice materials online? Don't worry, IELTS Bob has you covered. Here you'll find top-quality practice tests and expert tips to sharpen your reading skills and boost your confidence for exam day. In today's video, we'll dive into an IELTS listening practice test with answers. Whether you're just starting your IELTS journey or striving for a perfect score, this video is tailored to help you succeed. If you find this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with the latest IELTS tips and practice materials from IELTS Bob. Let's unlock your potential and make IELTS success your reality. Are you ready? Let's get started.
The test is in 4 parts: Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4. Now look at Part 1.
Part 1.
You'll hear a lecturer talking to students about the ozone layer and CFCs. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 7.
Today, it is well known that CFCs, or chlorofluorocarbons, can do immense damage to the ozone layer, which protects the Earth from harmful radiation from the sun. However, it was as recently as the mid-1970s when the connection between CFCs and ozone layer destruction was first established. The story starts back in 1957, when James Lovelock invented the electron capture detector. This is a machine that can detect very small amounts of a chemical compound in the atmosphere. Indeed, using the machine, it was Lovelock who was the first person to detect the widespread presence of CFCs in the Earth's atmosphere. In 1973, Lovelock, on a research trip which he'd funded himself, measured the amount of CFCs in the atmosphere in the Arctic and in Antarctica, but unfortunately came to the wrong conclusion that CFCs are not harmful to the environment. Following on from this work, though, in 1974, Sherry Rowland and Mario Molina published the very first scientific paper on the connection between CFCs and ozone depletion. This quickly prompted the world's first ban on the use of CFCs, which was enacted in 1975 by the US state of Oregon. Further bans followed. In 1978, the United States and several European countries banned the use of CFCs in spray cans. CFCs were still allowed to be used, though, for refrigeration and in solvents. It was in the mid-1980s that scientists in Antarctica observed a huge depletion in the ozone layer above them, often called the hole in the ozone layer. This led, in 1987, to the signing of the Montreal Protocol, which called for further reductions in the production and use of CFCs, and then, 2 years later, to a European Union agreement to ban the production of all CFCs by the end of the century.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 8 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 8 to 10.
So why exactly are CFCs so harmful? One of the reasons CFCs were so popular in the production of solvents and refrigeration coolants is that they are unreactive. That is, They don't react easily or at all with other chemical compounds. It's this property, however, that also makes them dangerous. Because they are unreactive, it's very difficult for them to be broken down. This gives them a long lifespan, more than 100 years in some cases, and allows them to rise into the upper levels of the atmosphere, the stratosphere, unchanged. There, ultraviolet radiation from the sun starts to break them down, freeing the chlorine atoms from the CFCs. It's this chlorine that helps destroy the ozone layer.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You'll hear a monologue about a guided tour to London.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 17.
Hello, can I just have your attention for a minute? Thank you. My name is Mary Golding. Some of you may recognize me. I used to be a lecturer here at the college, but I changed jobs last year and now I work as the student officer. Okay, well, I'm in today to tell you about a guided tour that we've got going to, London. Well, this will be a good chance for those of you who haven't been to London before to have a look at this beautiful city. I think those of you who come will thoroughly enjoy it. The trip is going to be for 5 days, from the 31st of March, which is a Saturday, to the 4th of April, the following Wednesday. We'll be taking a medium-sized coach, so there'll be 45 places on that. Last time it was a minibus with only 16 places, which proved insufficient for students' needs. According to the London Development Agency, London has over 200 museums, 500 cinema screens, 108 music halls, and 5 symphony orchestras. Needless to say, we can't see it all in one day. Here are some major sites we are going to tackle on the first visit to London. On the first day we're in London, we'll be going on a boat trip up the River Thames and up the London Eye. The Eye is a giant modern Ferris wheel which stands on the south of the river across from the Houses of Parliament. The boat cruise is included in the cost of the trip, so you won't need to worry about spending extra money. But you have to pay to ride the Eye to gaze out over the vast city. After that, we'll visit the Houses of Parliament. The Houses of Parliament, also known as Westminster Palace, was designed in the Gothic style. One of London's famous landmarks, Big Ben, the clock tower named for its 13-ton bell, is also found here. You can have a free visit up there. I think you all know Westminster Abbey, one of the most visited Christian churches in the world. There is no admission charge for this, but there are lots of souvenir shops around, so you might need some money for those. On the second day, we'll be going to the British Museum. The oldest museum in the world is also the most visited site in London. You have to pay to get in there, but it's not expensive.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 18 to 20.
Also, the most visited site in London. You have to pay to get in there, but it's not expensive. The museum's newly constructed £100 million Great Court, a 2-acre square enclosed by a glass roof, is the largest covered public square in Europe. It is called the Great Court. On the third day, you'll be free to do whatever you like. Personally, I recommend the Natural History Museum. It has over 68 million specimens. Fun exhibits include the Blue Whale exhibit, Rainforest Gallery, Earthquake Experience, and dinosaur displays. The Globe Theatre is a place worthy of visiting. The original Globe Theatre, where actors performed William Shakespeare's plays, burned down in 1613. The newly reconstructed Globe, however, copies original drawings of the 16th century's building's details and uses many of the same techniques and materials. Theatregoers can see performances of Shakespeare's plays, such as Romeo and Juliet and Much Ado About Nothing. If you'd like, can you sign up on this form on the student notice board by Friday? It'll be first come, first served.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 3.
You are going to hear a conversation between Sally and Ben. They are new college students. You now have some time to read questions 21 to 25. Now, listen to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi, Ben.
Sally.
How are you?
Fine.
I wondered if I'd run into you. When did you get here?
I only arrived last night, just in time. I prefer to travel on Sundays to miss the working rush. I suppose you arrived in plenty of time.
Oh, I've been here for 4 days now, so it must have been Thursday that I arrived. I like to have a good chance to look around and settle in.
I should have come earlier too. I'm hoping to get a part-time job.
Well, you've no time today, I suppose. Do you still plan to be an architect?
Yes, it's what I've always wanted to do. And you were planning to do economics, weren't you?
Yes, I was, but now I've decided on psychology instead.
How many textbooks do you have to get? I've been given this long list, and I'm sure they'll cost a fortune. See?
That looks a lot. It's longer than my list.
Well, it's 14 all told. So I might use library copies instead of buying some of them. What about you?
I'll probably buy the whole lot of mine because I only have 5 on my list, although I'm sure there are many more I'll have to read.
Luckily, we don't have to read them all straight away. Have you got your class timetable yet?
It came with the book list. When do your lectures start?
Tuesday. That's tomorrow. How about yours?
Oh, I've got an extra day, the day after yours start.
Now you have some time to read questions 26 to 30. As the conversation continues, they are talking about their new college life. Listen carefully and answer questions 26 to 30.
It's nothing like school, is it?
Not so far, and the lectures will certainly be different. Do you have any special approach for keeping up with lectures and the amount we have to read?
Well, I usually try to read every word in a book, in case I miss something important. so I suppose I'll try to write down every word of the lecture if I can.
Oh, I couldn't do that. I'd get cramp in my fingers, and I wouldn't really hear what was being said. I usually skim a book when I read, and underline key parts, so I guess I'll try to make notes on the main points of the lecture. Have you thought of using a cassette recorder?
You mean to record the lecture?
Yep. Then you could make really good notes.
Is it allowed?
I think so. It must be. Plenty of people seem to do it. It has to be better than trying to write every word as you listen.
Anyway, what's your first lecture about?
Oh, it's on the Industrial Revolution.
The Industrial Revolution? Sounds boring to me.
Not really. It made a big difference to everything, including architecture eventually. So what's your first lecture about?
It's about what separates humans from other animals.
Okay. Look, I was on my way to the library to check out some of these books on my list. I have a tutorial paper to give in a couple of weeks.
Oh, what's the topic?
Well, I think our lecturer must have trouble thinking up topics. The topic is, why study architecture?
I don't know. It could give you a chance to set out what you want to do.
I guess so. Have you been given any tutorials to do yet?
Yes. Mine is called Needs for Sleep.
Sounds almost as interesting as mine.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You are going to hear a talk on Canada.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning and welcome to this talk on Canada. Many people think of Canada as a land of ice and snow. They think of it as a young country with few inhabitants, a country of English-speaking white people. While some of this is true, it is also an inaccurate description of the country we call Canada. Canada lies in the northern half of the continent of North America. The most northern parts of Canada are sometimes called the land of the midnight sun, because at certain times of the year the sun never sets and is still shining faintly at midnight. This northern part of Canada is cold and mostly snow-covered all year round. Most of the people who live in this northern part of Canada are called Inuit or Dene. They were once called Eskimos. They are the original people of this land and are part of what are called the First Nation. As we move to the more southern parts of Canada, the land changes and so does the people. Moving from east to west in southern Canada, we travel from the Atlantic provinces of Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island. These small provinces, with small populations, border on the Atlantic Ocean. The land in these provinces is not very fertile, so fishing, forestry and mining are the main industries, although in some small areas, agriculture is also important. If we travel west from the Atlantic provinces, we come to central Canada, composed of the large provinces of Quebec and Ontario. Both provinces are rich in natural resources, have fertile land, and are the centres of industry for Canada's largest cities. Toronto and Montreal are found in these provinces. The province of Quebec is the centre of French language and culture in Canada. In fact, Montreal is the second largest French-speaking city in the world after Paris. Finally, in the far west of Canada, we come to the province of British Columbia. This province is separated from the prairies by the Rocky Mountains and is bounded on the west by the Pacific Ocean. British Columbia is often called simply the West Coast. British Columbia is an attractive place for tourists because of its mild climate, spectacular mountains, seacoast, and beautiful forests. Agriculture, forestry, shipping and fishing are major industries in British Columbia. The people of this land of Canada are as varied as its landscape. The original settlers, those we call the people of the First Nations, came from Asia by crossing the Bering Strait from Siberia to Alaska. In their new environment, they developed many new languages and cultures. In the 16th century, the first Europeans arrived in eastern Canada. They came from Britain and France. By making treaties with the original inhabitants, they gradually established colonies in eastern and central Canada. After a war with France, Britain took over the French colonies in Quebec and eastern Canada. By the end of the 18th century, all of Canada was under British rule. From this time until the present century, most of the immigrants to Canada were British, Scottish, and Irish. In this century, however, Canada has had an influence of settlers from all over the world. There are now hundreds of thousands of people from Asia, Africa, and South America who now call Canada their home.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe. After subscribing, please leave a comment below saying subscribed, and we will respond as soon as possible. By subscribing, you're supporting our mission to help others achieve their IELTS goals. Thank you so much for your support.